I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk, well, I know
Okay, let's do this. Oklahoma playing Alabama for Senior Day, Saturday evening. It's a game we got to talk about, but we have some other things on the docket to hit up as well. This is a packed episode of the Sooner Nation podcast. Offensive coordinator search is in full swing. Brent Venables dropping some nuggets at his press conference on Tuesday. Basketball is 3-0 on the season. We've got over under. I'm asking the questions to Caleb on this episode. And then it kind of gets into all about Alabama after that. Let's start with Dan Mullen, Caleb. I don't know if you saw this on Tuesday, but Brent Venables kind of squelched the Dan Mullen talk. Now, he did say that he had reached out to Dan Mullen previously, but not on this cycle. I guess in the effort to replace Jeff Lebby, Mullen was one of the guys that he talked to. And that should maybe make some people who just thought Brent Venables looked at the coaches and said, "Oh, Seth, you're from Oklahoma, you take the job," that he actually did do some vetting and some research. Does that make you feel better or worse about Seth Luttrell?
Definitely worse, just because
Because he
we,
chose Seth Luttrell.
yes. Um, I still would like to know who else he reached out to. If it was kind of just a swing and miss and Mullen, it was like, okay, Seth Luttrell, you're the easy guy. Don't have to do that again. I would have loved for Mullen to join this team. I think he brings a lot to the table, mainly SEC experience,
Mm-hmm.
something that I really would have loved to have, but doesn't sound like it's gonna be Dan Mullen at all, after all. He's one of the guys that, I talked about a couple of weeks ago when we broke
Right,
down our list
right.
of three offensive coordinators. I'm 0 for 2 so far.
Now
One of the
Holgerson
guys,
is he's just the interim. So that's not a dead. The odds are not zero. It's not like Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance. He's not the full-time offensive coordinator. He's much like Joe John Finley, just in the interim at Nebraska while they figure things out.
yeah, but I think we all kind of know who that next coach is going to be already.
And I'm okay
Um,
with that. We're gonna jump into this, and I'm okay if we're thinking about the same guy, and I think we are. I'm okay with it. Um, I want to say this though, because this is something I've talked about on previous episodes. We have to move away. We use this as our Seth Luttrell was bad, and I was late to come to that party. All right, you kind of hosted the Seth Luttrell is bad party, and I was late to it, but he was bad. But we've got to move away from this idea that a coach that's been fired is irredeemable. That's such a it's such a lazy argument for the guy you don't want. I don't want him. He's been fired. I mean, we've already talked through this about the coaches that beat Oklahoma this year, coaches that are in position to make it into the college football playoff that have been fired. Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, just to name a few. Those are all guys that have been fired, and look where they are. And so we can't, I don't believe, we can't just keep throwing out this argument. Well, he's been fired. I want someone who hasn't been fired. You're going to overlook a lot of good talent just because a guy got fired. And that seemed to be like the big argument for Dan Mullen, or I guess Dan Mullen. He was fired by Florida. Okay, he was fired by Ole Miss. He wasn't really fired. Well, he was fired by Florida, but the point is, he wasn't fired as an offensive coordinator. And that dude was a genius as an offensive coordinator. Look at the guys that he put, look what he did with Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow is a iconical figure, not a great quarterback. He's not a guy that you would put in the same class as some of these elites that were first round draft picks. He's not a Baker Mayfield. He's not a Jalen Hurts. He's not, pick another guy from another school. But he won a national championship with Tim Tebow, and Tim Tebow won a Heisman Trophy and made it into the NFL. Why? Because that's how good Dan Mullen was as an offensive coordinator. And so you're willing to throw all that away. Not you personally. I'm just saying the people that make this argument. You're willing to throw all that away, all that possibility, just because he's been fired? That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and do we kind of want to talk about who we think the next coordinator is? We're just gonna try to leave it. I think it's gonna be announced sooner rather than later.
Well,
Um,
let's talk. Let's go with Brent Venables' quote on Tuesday at his press conference. He said, "This is why we feel like the Dan Mullen situation is closed." Right? He said, "If I'm Brent Venables, and this was in response to a question from Eric Bailey of the Tulsa World." Brent said, "If I'm talking to the right people, which I believe I am, they're going to be sensitive to finishing what they started and being loyal to their players. But sooner than later is when I want it finished." Now, the fact that he said loyal to their players, because you just said they're going to be sensitive to finishing what they started, you'd be like, okay, it could be Dan Mullen. He wants to finish the season and finish his contract with ESPN, which would be super stupid to do. But he says being loyal to their players. So you know that who Brent's talking to is a coach. He's a guy that right now is involved in the season somewhere. Now, I'm going to give you three names, and then we're going to go to the name that, and you and I have not spoken about this, but I think we're on the same page. I'm going to give you three names, and I just want you to know, I want you to tell me whether you feel like, yeah, he could, I'd be okay with him. Take out the name that you want, I don't know if that the name that we have is the name that you want, but let me give you three other possibilities before we talk about the guy that I believe both of us are on the same page with. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Okay. So the first one is Jake Spavital, who's the offensive coordinator at Baylor. Does he raise the meter any with you?
that was a name I kind of saw popping up late, and not really. I mean, Baylor hasn't been terrible this season, but they really haven't done anything where I'm like, yeah, that's a guy that I really wouldn't mind. But I think his name it was kind of like the whole when we were replacing Lincoln Riley.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had your list of names from the start, and then a little bit later down the line, there's a couple new names that popped up, and they were like, yeah, okay, I wouldn't mind it, but you kind of knew since their name popped up so late, it wasn't going to be him. That's kind of how I feel about with him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can see that, and I can agree with that. The thing that I like about Spavital, there's two things. First of all, the recruiting inroads in the state of Texas are there, and I like that. Secondly, he's shown that he has the ability to adapt to different offensive styles based on the talent that's on the team. And that's something that we didn't see from Seth Luttrell. And honestly, Lincoln Riley doesn't have that ability either. It's like, this is what I do, and I need to get talent to do what I do. And when you got guys that can't run that style of offense, then you suffer greatly. And Spavital has shown that he can adapt his offensive styles, but I don't think he's the guy. The next name is Joe Craddock, who is the offensive coordinator at Tulane. And let me tell you something, man. If it falls through with our top guy, this is my number two. I think he's risen to my number two. I know everyone's high on Mike Shanahan. We'll talk about him, but Tulane's Tulane's averaging 40.5 points per game this season. And um, he just kind of maintained what was there, but with lesser talent, if you will. And so it's the lesser talent that really intrigues me, that he's doing great things at Tulane and he doesn't have elite talent. So imagine what he could do with elite talent.
Yeah, and that's one of the guys that kind of appeared late, but he stuck around. I'm thinking back to when right before we hired Brent Venables,
Mm-hmm.
you had guys kind of like Dan Lanning that kind of popped in and was kind of in that conversation, popped out before the end of the race. He's definitely, I agree with you. I wouldn't mind snagging him. I mean, the last four games they had 45 points, 34 points, 52 points, and then 35 points.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great offensive mind. I mean, we talk highly about Oklahoma's defense. They put up just under 300 yards against Oklahoma. And
Right.
again, they had a lot of lesser talented guys.
Yeah, I know Oklahoma fans would kill for offensive numbers like that. Mike Shanahan is that seems to be one of the more popular hot names. The Hoosiers are undefeated. I'm really curious to see what they do this weekend with Ohio State. Number 2 offense in the nation with 43.9 points per game. Are you okay with Mike Shanahan?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the issue we're going to run into with Mike Shanahan is he's having too good of a season and he's going to get a head coaching job.
Yeah.
That's just going to be what it boils down to. I think, you know, Indiana has one of the better offenses in the country. I talked about their quarterback in our last podcast being kind of a under the radar Heisman candidate.
Uh-huh. And he can change all that on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they come out Saturday and they drop an egg. You going, okay, how is this team number 5 in the country? But they
But
go out there and they
right.
pull off the upset. And you're like, how is this team only the number 5 team in the
Yeah.
country? And that he goes from, I'm not even going to try to say his last name, Raruki. I'm going to try it. Raruki, whatever his name is. He goes from a outside shot to kind of pushing Dylan Gabriel for
Uh-huh.
the Heisman.
No, he definitely emerges as one of the front runners. I agree.
But again, you look at, there's a lot of big, powerful, power four schools that are going to be without a head coach. And you kind of think it might be on him. He might be the
Mm-hmm.
guy that gets the call.
Yeah. Here's the guy that since you didn't say that either any of those, that's my guy. So we're both in on Ben Arbuckle, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Offensive coordinator at Washington State. Tell me what you like about Arbuckle.
I mean, again, I just feel like his offense is fluid.
Yeah.
It's consistent. They're averaging about 30 points a game. Um, I know that they have a kind of a weaker schedule since they're still in the Pac-12,
Mm-hmm.
even though the Pac-12 just has two teams. I think that's one reason that he'd be an easy kind of grab is
Absolutely.
because who wants to? I know the Pac-12 is adding teams, but the Pac-12 is not going to be what the Pac-12 was last year or the years before. And not only that, but what I really like is he's got a young quarterback that will most likely come with him. Unless Brent Venables is like, no, hey, we got two guys here in Norman already. But I mean, this kid, sophomore season, 26 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, 2,700 yards throwing. I mean, he's doing stuff as a sophomore, and he's gonna know the system already. So I think it'll be a package deal to really kind of push whoever stays in that quarterback room to try to challenge them as the starting quarterback.
I love Arbuckle. He's young enough that he's not going to. Shanahan, like you said, Shanahan comes to Norman for one season. He turns this offense around. He's gone. Arbuckle's young enough that he'll be here for multiple seasons. And sometimes that works. I know you're too young for this, but Mike Leach was here for 1999, and then he left. Mangino becomes offensive coordinator, and the Sooners win the national title with Mangino running Mike Leach's offense. And that's something that could happen with the Shanahan. But man, you want a guy that can give you years. And Arbuckle is that guy. He's innovative. Like what he does Offensively, it's intriguing and it's innovating. It's almost like the reset with Mike Leach. When Mike Leach came in '99 with Bob Stoops, what they did had never been done before, not just at Oklahoma, but really in the Big 12. And they changed Bob Stoops and Mike Leach changed the face of college football with what they did. And that stems back to, Hal Mummy, and you go back in the coaching tree, but that's the kind of guy that Ben Arbuckle is. He's innovative in that he's bringing in concepts that are going to revolutionize and bring about the next wave of change offensively in college football. And he's a quarterbacks coach. I mean, he can develop quarterbacks. Oklahoma currently does not have someone that can do that. It's fresh perspective, and like you said, you have a high chance of getting a quarterback to come with him, which Oklahoma desperately needs. I love it. I mean, he's my number one. I'll be honest with you, all these guys are good, but if it's not Arbuckle, I'm probably going to be a little bit disappointed.
I'm with you, and I don't know if you saw the stat, but do you know what year he graduated high school?
I like 2012 or something like that. It's recent. What
It's the
year? What?
same year as your oldest son,
13.
14.
Oh, you
So
sure he
it's so
graduated in
he
14? I thought he graduated in 13.
well, Arbuckle graduated in
What
14.
one of us is wrong.
The
Man,
stat I
man,
saw was 2014.
no, I'm talking about your brother, my oldest son. I mean, one of us, hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast because one of us is going to be wrong on that.
Well, I thought he graduated in 2014, but I think 2013 sounds about right.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. But again, he'll never know. Um, yeah, he's young. That's what I'm saying. He's young, meaning you're going to have him for time. I mean, he's not going to be a one and done type coach, and that's what you want. And quarterbacks, man, he's young enough to relate to the quarterbacks, not just mechanics, but on a personal level, and that's what you want. I mean, think about Mike McDaniel at the Miami Dolphins. Why did the players love him? Because he's not an old retread. I mean, he's young enough that he identifies in many life circles as those players, and Arbuckle's the same thing collegiately. And so, I mean, I love it. I love the idea. I think I I don't know if you saw. I was trying to pull it up and I couldn't find it. And I shouldn't bring this up without having the direct quote. But Brent Venables was asked about Jackson Arnold's future. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It did not.
Um,
It did not seem like Venables was all in on Jackson Arnold. I mean, it was not like, he's 100% going to be our quarterback in 2025. Did you catch that vibe?
yeah, I mean, did you see the interview with Jackson Arnold about his future?
No, I didn't see that one.
It's the same thing. He basically was like, we got 2 games to focus on, and that's all that matters.
Yeah,
And I mean, I think even if Jackson Arnold comes out, wins these next 2 games somehow, some way, goes to a bowl game, wins that bowl game, I think his time at Oklahoma is done just because he needs a restart. And he
yeah,
knows that. His family knows that. This coaching staff knows that. And it's kind of like okay, hey, you just need a fresh start. Even though you into the season out strong, and he also knows that even if he stays, that this offensive coordinator, whoever it may be, is going to want another talented quarterback in that room to push for
hmm
that job.
yeah.
And so I think he does try to go somewhere to be the for sure starter.
Yeah, and I think that what that means is for these last two games, three, if they miraculously make it to a bowl game, it turns into an audition for Jackson Arnold, for somebody else. Now, there's something else and this one bothers me more than Jackson Arnold, that Mike Hawkins in Colorado talk is I think there's legs to that.
I haven't seen anything about that. I I'm interested to see what Colorado looks like at the end of this year, just because there's already so many rumors about Dion going to the NFL.
Dion's not going to the NFL. Dion can't be Dion in the NFL, and so I'm just telling you, he's not doing that.
I think he could.
Well, we'll see. Time will tell. But
We said that, Dion can be Dion at a Power Five school.
I
He
never
goes
said
to
that. I never
he goes
said
to
that.
I know you never said that, but a lot of people did. He goes from Jacksonville State to Colorado. He still's the same. I mean, you kind of starting to see these less serious coaches make waves in the NFL. And so I think he could go be a face of a franchise and people are going to eat it up even more than they are at Colorado.
Well, here's the thing: is that Dion is the face of the franchise, if you will, of Colorado. He's the guy who raises the money. He's the guy who gets the attention. But he has surrounded himself with good coaches, and that's the key to success at Colorado. Um, I don't think owners and assistant coaches want to put up with the Deion Sanders circus. Players want to be the top person that's talked about and the media is drawn to in the NFL. There'll be clashes. It is what it is. We'll see what happens. Um, let's talk about timing. Brent Venables said sooner rather than later. There were rumors that it could happen as early. There's an announcement as early as today. We're recording this on Wednesday, the 20th of November, that it's something could happen today. Um, it is pressing because you have National Signing Day coming up on December 4th, which is what, 2 weeks from today. And then the transfer portal opens up December 9th. You have to make an announcement probably within the next 10 days, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I think that's why also Washington State I mean, Arbuckle makes the most sense at Washington State just because their season's done basically after this
They have
week.
the Pac-12 championship game.
That it's not a game. That Pac-12
I,
championship game is Saturday. After that, it's over. I mean,
it was a
you
joke, man.
host Wyoming. So I think, I mean, to me, that makes the most sense. After Saturday's win, or after Saturday, if they win or lose, he gets announced. I mean, he's going to finish out that season, but I mean, what bowl game is Washington State going to make? They're not going to make a New Year's Six
No,
bowl.
well, I mean, yeah, that's
They're not
the
going to make
bowl.
the
Yeah,
playoffs.
the bowl game is irrelevant unless it's a part of the playoffs. And so I think you get through that. You get through that Pac-12 championship game. I did air quotes there. And then you make the announcement. That's what I think. That I don't think it's happening this week. I think it happens maybe Sunday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. It's like I said, after that Saturday's game, um, I think there was just a lot of. I think that they know who it is today at 9:40 a.m. Wednesday, the 20th. They know who the next coach is. I am fairly confident that Arbuckle was like, yeah, I'll be there this time next year. Just let me get through this week, and then we're gonna know. If it's not Sunday, it's definitely gonna be Monday.
Uh-huh.
But I think, the kind of all the big announcements so far this season has come on Sundays. So, I have a big long travel day on Saturday, and I'm fully expected by the time I land, I'm gonna be able to pull up my phone and be like, okay, hey, we have a new head coach. Well, not a new head coach, new offense coordinator.
Whoa! Breaking news. um, okay, so let's talk about recruiting because December 4th is coming. Are you worried about Michael Fasusi being in Texas this weekend?
As of right now, no. Um, I mean, everything has pointed to that he still wants to be in Norman. He's still locked in. Can you blame the kid for wanting to go see some flashing lights at Texas and maybe Texas A&M the following week? The Texas A&M visit scares me a little bit more than Texas, just because Texas A&M versus Texas is a lot bigger game than Texas versus Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, I'm not worried just quite yet. Um,
You
even
saw
Steve,
did you saw Venables say if you're visiting other programs, you're not committed.
yeah.
Okay.
And I have mixed feelings about that. I understand it, but at the same time, I feel like kids are still gonna I mean, this is a 17-year-old kid
Mhm.
who just had a heartbreaking loss in the playoffs. I mean, if I'm in his shoes, I'm a 5 star. I I canceled visits. The team I'm committed to is not doing too hot. Why wouldn't you explore your options?
Yeah.
I don't blame him for wanting to explore his options.
I hope it's more of just getting that experience than it is exploring options
Yeah,
because,
and that's what it sounds like it is.
yeah,
I mean, you have Oklahoma guys, the insiders saying, yeah, it's still Oklahoma, but you also have national guys who are like, yeah, it's still Oklahoma.
right.
So it makes me feel a little bit better. Now, when we talk next week, it could be different. Um, it could be, hey, he went to Texas and it was an amazing trip and now he's on flip watch. But nothing has come from it yet. So I don't think Sooner fans should be at this time should be worried.
Okay. All right. We'll see what happens and what develops with that because money is definitely going to be involved. Oklahoma basketball 3-0. We've got over under. It's all about the Sooners and the Crimson Tide. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is the Sooner Nation podcast. The Sooners off to a 3-0 start in the basketball season. And this is a pivotal season, right, Caleb, for Porter Mosher? This is a pivotal season for him.
Yeah, this is make or break for him. If he doesn't make uh the tournament, he's got to be gone. You can't have 4 years in a row of not making the tournament. I wanted him gone last year. I've not been high on Porter Moser. Um, and so yeah, it's time to either crap or get off the pot for him. He's gotta do something this year.
Four Sooners averaging in double figures, led by Jalen Moore, 22 points per game. Jeremiah Fears, the real deal. I mean, 3 games in, and I know it hasn't been high level competition, but still, for the true freshman, 14 points per game. Kobe Elvis is, to me, that's the kind of the kid that's come out of nowhere, 13.3 points per game. Goodine is 11 points per game. And your boy Sam Godwin, almost averaging a double double, 9 points, 11.7 rebounds for Godwin. Um, they got East Texas A&M on Thursday, and then they go to the Bahamas to face Providence. I think it's going to be a little while before we really know what's the true identity of this team. But I mean, it's been a good start for sure.
Yeah, and my issue is how many seasons has Porter Moser started good?
No,
You
I mean
know,
he hasn't. Remember, like 2 seasons ago, they lost the first game to Sam Houston.
yeah, but then they bounce back and they beat a ranked Arkansas team and then they beat a ranked Florida team.
That's true. I mean, I'm just saying, I like the athleticism. I don't
That's
know.
what we were saying this time last year, though, is this
Yeah,
team's more
but
athletic.
here's what's different to me. Looking at, and I didn't intend for us to talk about basketball this long, but let's do it. Um, the you had the Groves brothers. They came into the portal, and it just didn't work. And then you got this guy leads for the portal. That guy leads for the portal. Um, and it was like he was barely treading water with managing the transfer portal. And now you've got Jeremiah Fears, which is finally a guy you recruited that looks like a guy who can carry the team, and he is going to be the key player along. Uh, I mean, that's starting five. I think is the. I guess what I'm saying is when you look at Moore, you look at Fears, they've got the strongest starting five that they've had, and it's a better combination of recruits versus portal guys. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not saying they're definitely a tournament team, but I will say this: where being in the SEC was bad for football, I think it'll be good for basketball.
Yeah, and I agree. But again, we'll find out. We'll find out a little more with Providence. Um,
Right.
they are a little bit better team, and then in the next game is Georgia Tech. They're gonna be a better team, and you have Oklahoma State and Michigan coming up. the issue is we've been physical, we've been more athletic in the first couple of games, past couple of years. And then once you get to those other teams that have big bodies, Sam Godwin kind of disappears. Jalen Moore kind of disappears.
Well,
I'm just
Jalen
hoping that
Moore was injured. I don't think that's a fair shake for Jalen Moore.
I just hope that they can keep that up. And I do think we're gonna see that against Providence because Providence is not a typical lower level
Right.
school. They're I don't want to say a powerhouse, but they're well known. Um, and so I feel like we're gonna get something going here a couple weeks, especially in that month of December.
Yeah.
We're gonna see a lot more than what we have so far.
I agree. Well, I mean, we'll keep mentioning it. We'll see what happens. Okay, true or false. Over under. These are all about Oklahoma and Alabama. Well, Oklahoma in regards to the Alabama game. You've got about 1 minute for each one. I've got five. Okay, and I'm looking at our timer here. You got about 1 minute for each one. Okay, so I don't want to rush, but we're gonna go through this. I'm just gonna be quiet and let you talk. Okay.
Alrighty.
Here we go. There's five. Here's number one. Through 10 games this season, Oklahoma is allowing opponents just 319 yards of offense per game. The last time the Sooners held opponents to a lower figure than that over an entire season was 2009, and you and I have referred back to that multiple times. This is Alabama coming, so we're going to raise that bar just a little bit. I'm setting the over-under at 350 yards. Over-under for total offensive yards for Alabama, 350.
I'm gonna say under.
Wow. Okay.
Um, this is a Alabama team that defense is not their strong suit, which is crazy to say. It's their offense. And so I think this Alabama team will slow it down, kind of like we saw Tennessee do.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna they're gonna get a lead,
Yeah.
and then there's kind of all right, because we have a better defense than the last three opponents they faced. So it's gonna be like, okay, let's just keep their defense on. I'll keep our defense off the field and just control the ball with our offense. And I think that's gonna be their game plan. So I'm gonna say under.
Okay. On the other side, Oklahoma has averaged 417 yards of offense over its last three games. Alabama, we're going to lower that threshold to the same number, 350 offensive yards for the Sooners.
I mean, you gotta go under. I just have zero faith in this offense to come out and do anything. Um, I mean, I feel like that number is inflated a lot because of that main game.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, I'm gonna go under.
Okay. Let's go with Javante Barnes, averaging 6.7 yards per carry over the last three games. Obviously, he didn't play against Missouri. Let's go with 5.5 yards. No, sorry. Let's go with 5 yards per carry for Javante Barnes. Over or under?
I mean, it just depends on how we use him. If we go back to
It's
how we were using
prediction time, Caleb. How are we going to use him?
are we gonna have the same running game we had against Ole Miss and Maine? Where we're gonna do the running attack we had against Missouri?
Well, you didn't have him against Missouri.
And I understand that,
Right.
but we still changed our running attack, even though we have backs that are similar to his style of running. But I feel like he can definitely hit that 5 yards a carry average. So I'm gonna say over.
Okay. So let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Let's talk about your boy, Danny Stutzman. He's averaging 9.6 tackles per game this season. Let's just bring that down a tick. Let's make it 9.5 over under on total tackles for Danny Stutzman.
I'm gonna say over. I think, he's kind of emerged in this past couple weeks of being, you know, the star. At first offense tried to attack only him, and then other players stepped up. And I think offense is kind of realizing, okay, hey, if we double to triple Danny, someone else is gonna be free that can come make us pay. And so I think teams are having to leave him on one-on-ones, and I think that's why we've seen him have such success past couple weeks. So I'm gonna say over.
All right. Last one. You're doing great on time, by the way. Last one. Oklahoma throughout the season, over the course of the season, the Sooners are averaging 1.8 turnovers per game. Now, we saw what happened against Missouri with 4 turnovers that cost them that game in Columbia. So that's going to give that a couple of ticks up. I'm going to set the turnover rate over under at 2 for the Sooners. Over under at 2. What would you take?
I'm gonna take the over. I think if you would have set the over under turnovers just for Jackson Arnold at 2, I would have taken the over. Um, are we worried about him dropping the coin toss? Because he's going out there.
I saw that, but he doesn't. Yes,
He's gonna find a way to fumble the
no,
coin.
he's gonna say something like instead of heads or tails, he's gonna say hails or something like that, and then
We're gonna defer. We'll defer the
yeah,
second half.
yeah, we'll defer to next week or something like that. But yeah. All right, so you're taking the over at 2 on turnovers.
Yes.
All right, we got a lot more coming up about Oklahoma and Alabama. The scariest thing about the Tide, what's the acceptable offensive performance for you, the defensive game plan against this Alabama offense, and key players. Stay with us here on the Sooner Nation podcast. Caleb, when you look at Alabama coming into Norman, let me tell you the thing that scares me the most about the Crimson Tide. The last 3 games, 34-0 win over Missouri, 42-13 win over LSU, 52-7 win over Mercer. Now, Mercer, I think they're like 8 or 9 wins on the season, but still, I'm not going to say they're a better team than Oklahoma. But we know Missouri beat the Sooners, and we're a little bit afraid of that trip to Baton Rouge coming up. Here's what I can definitively say is that all 3 of those programs have a better offense than what Oklahoma has on the field. The defense the way Alabama's played defense over the last month scares me the most about Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean they've definitely turned it around defensively, but again, I just I their defense is not what really scares me. It's still their offense. Jalen Milroe might be one of the best athletes in the
Mm-hmm.
country. He's just a very dynamic quarterback, great runner, great arm strength. He's kind of like Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts combined. He's got
Okay.
the speed like Kyler Murray, but he's got the power run like Jalen Hurts. And then he just has the arm talent of both of them. We haven't seen him make as many mistakes this year as we saw the years prior. I get they still have 2 losses, but he's been playing really good football.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on him. I mean, he's the leading rusher for the Tide, 608 yards, averaging 5.1 yards per carry. I think defensively, your game plan is centered around him. Like you want to take away the run game for Alabama, um, that make him pass. This is a team as a whole is averaging 192.1 rushing yards per game. So it's that containment defense, don't let the running backs get loose. Keep him in the pocket. And if Milroe, I mean, if he runs the ball, if it's go back to the Houston game, if the quarterback's running the ball effectively, the defense is sunk. And so it's all about containment, contain, right?
Yeah, and one of the games you mentioned was that 42-13 LSU game.
Mm-hmm.
Do you happen to know how many touchdowns he had in that game
I
total?
don't know.
He had 4 total touchdowns. You want to guess how many came on the ground?
4?
4.
Yeah. I remember he ran. I was thinking 3, but you're right with 4. Yeah, so that puts defensive guys like R. Mason Thomas because I mean you got to contain.
Absolutely.
Danny Stutzman's going to have to bring pressure up the middle, but also has to play those running backs, and so it puts those guys in the spotlight. Is there another defensive player that you would put in the spotlight for this Saturday?
Yeah, I'm gonna highlight Billy Bowman.
Mm-hmm.
This is gonna be a game where how the safeties play is gonna depend on how Jalen Milroe plays.
Yeah.
We saw that against Georgia in the second half. When those safeties started kind of disguising what they were doing, he struggled a little bit. You know, Billy's one of the best safeties in the country, so he can do that for sure. Um, so really it's how our secondary and whole plays,
Mm-hmm.
because if it's not if, it's when Jalen does get to that second level because he is a dynamic enough player to do it a couple times this game.
Yeah.
What can our secondary players do? What can these safeties do? And so I that's why I'm highlighting Billy.
All right, finish this sentence for me. Oklahoma will be in a position to win this game if.
Alabama forgets to show up.
So you're saying there's no hope.
No, just if our offense and defense can play like they did against Ole Miss in the first half of the entire game.
Mhm.
If this offense can, they don't have to go down and score every possession, but if they can get those long drives to give our defense rest and then put points up on the board, you know, I was happy with that first half against Missouri because we got points.
Uh-huh.
This is what we're going to have to do against this Alabama team, but we're going to have to score touchdowns and not just field goals,
Well, look, man, that point spread did shrink down. It was 14 and now it's 13 and a half.
which is just mind blowing to me that we're still 14-point underdogs at home.
Offensively, give me what would be you talked about you got to well, let me answer the question. For me, Oklahoma would be in a position to win this game if both the defense and special teams score points. It's not enough to have a great defensive game. The defense is going to have to score points because I don't think the offense can. And special teams, you get a punt return, you get a kickoff return, something like that, a punt block. You got to have some defensive and special team scores, in my opinion, for the Sooners to have a chance. Offensively, I'm not expecting much, but what's an acceptable performance for you offensively?
Just don't turn over the ball.
Yes.
Really don't turn over the ball and then just don't go three and out. Just look
Right.
like you have some type of pride out there when you're on the field. Um, and that's really it. Make sure that you protect the ball and you get your defense rest.
Turnovers is the number one thing for me. I'm going to add to that. I'm going to say as a team, not Javonte Barnes, not Jackson Arnold, but as a group, your 4 yards per carry are a little bit higher than that. And then you give up less than four quarterback sacks or less. That's going to show improvement. I do not expect Oklahoma to win this game, but that doesn't mean they can't look somewhat competent in losing this game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You put to the point of the season where you got to take moral victories and you just got to look improved. Just look improved. And that's really all we can ask for right now.
So the givens here are Jackson Arnold and the offensive line. Those are given. The Jackson Arnold's got to play his best game of the season, and the offensive line has to give him the ability to do that. Outside of those two guys, are those two units? Who's a player? Give me a player in the spotlight.
I'm gonna say all running backs. What running backs out on the field,
Uh-huh.
that's been our strength this season. And whoever's out there, if it's Javonte Barnes, Taylor Tatum, if Gavin Sawchuk reemerges, whoever it is, they're gonna have to be the best player on the field. They're gonna have to be able to run through the tackles and then have those dump offs in the flats and get yards. That's going to be the big position. It's not just going to be one player. It's going to be the entire running back room.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to go back to Javonte. I
I do
think,
too,
yeah,
but
and
I'm
so
saying
yeah,
even when he's out and we have rotations in,
uh-huh.
it's got to be you can't see a dip off in production.
No, I get it. I'm with you. You look through the SEC. There's another weekend with some garbage games like UTEP at Tennessee, Massachusetts at Georgia, Wofford at South Carolina, Louisiana Tech, Arkansas. Um, but there's some good conference games as well. Ole Miss, Florida. I mean, I didn't think that was going to be anything worth tuning into, and then Florida beat LSU last week. Texas better not sleep on that Kentucky defense, even though it's in Austin. Um, Missouri, Mississippi State, probably not much of a game. Texas A&M, Auburn suddenly looks a little bit interesting. And then, man, I love Vandy and LSU. I think that's probably going to be a better game. It's going to rival time slot wise Oklahoma and Alabama, and probably a better game, right?
Probably. Hopefully not, but probably.
ESPN matchup predictor has Alabama with an 81.6% chance of beating the Sooners in Norman. The Tide started out as a 14-point favorite. They're currently 13 and a half. The over-under is set at 47 and a half. Money line, negative 650 on the Tide. So Alabama clearly heavy favorites. Oklahoma, heavy underdogs. Before we give our predictions, is there anything in the SEC that you're going to be like, yeah, that's the game I want to watch?
I mean, really outside of Vandy and LSU, not really. I mean, Missouri, Mississippi State doesn't really do anything for me. South Carolina against what I haven't even heard of that school.
Wofford.
Wofford. I haven't even heard of that school before. That doesn't, I mean, yeah, and they lost to Mercer 22-3, so that tells you anything. So yeah, no, it's not really any games I'm like, oh yeah, that's gonna be a great game in the SEC outside of Vandy LSU.
I think they're a dog, not an underdog, but they're Wofford is either like the Bulldogs or the Terriers or
Yeah, ESPN mascot, it looks like a bulldog.
um man, I think it's the Terriers. Anyway, the point is pay attention to that name in March because they're usually a basketball school. And I don't think it's on the matchup predictors. I don't think they ever do like a full 100%, but it wouldn't surprise me if South Carolina was like, like a 99.9%, to win that game. Um, all
It's
right.
a Boston Terrier.
Oh, so it's the Terriers. Okay. All right. So I was right. I like it when I'm right. Um, I really like Vanderbilt LSU, man. I haven't really broken down games yet, but just on the first glance, LSU is 7.5-point favorite. I think I like Vanderbilt. Vandy is plus 250 on the money line. I don't know. I need to break that game down, but I mean, this is a team that just lost to Florida, and they're more than a touchdown favorite over a 6-4 Vandy, who, by the way, has the exact same record as the Tigers do. So that game very much intrigues me.
It does. And it being a night game
Right.
in
In Baton Rouge.
LSU's last three home games will all be night games, so I'm like, how does that happen? But I think that's kind of why you see that 7.5 point spread.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think Vandy could definitely go in there and shake some stuff up.
Now, I will say this, Baton Rouge, particularly at night, there are certain places across the college football landscape that when you think about night games, you're like, ooh, like Madison, Wisconsin, Penn State, Death Valley, Baton Rouge. You could even throw Lubbock, Texas in there. And that's why I think you're talking about they get the night games 3 in a row. But that's just people like to broadcast from there because of the way that atmosphere is. Okay, Oklahoma, Alabama. I hate to do this, man. Give me your score prediction. This one hurts. This one hurts because I've got no hope for the Sooners, but give me yours first.
I have 31-10 Alabama.
All right, we're close. We're in the neighborhood. I'm giving Alabama a little bit more, and I'm giving Oklahoma a little bit more. I've got 35-17 with the Tide. Clearly, that's going to cover that 13.5 spread. But you know what? I get to watch this game with you, so I'm pretty pumped about that. And then also expecting a loss, doesn't it remove all the pressure, all the tension, all the drama going in?
Yeah, until, it's like the Ole Miss game and they keep it really close until the very end.
Okay.
And you're like,
Yeah. And then
crap.
like, dang it. Yeah. I'm not getting, there could be like 10 seconds left and Oklahoma could be up like 8 points. And I'm not going to get my hopes up.
Oklahoma could be up 10 points. I'm like, nope, we're gonna somehow, some way lose this game.
All right. Well, we'll have something to recap the game following the weekend. Just a quick reminder, you can find us on the internet, heartland-sports.com. We've got things up to promote to preview the Sooners and the Tide. We've got things about the offensive coordinator search. We've got Oklahoma City Thunder stuff. Our guy, Zach Lowe, does an excellent job with that. We're on Twitter at Sports Heartland on Twitter. Caleb, enjoy your weekend. Everybody else, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your football. And we'll talk about it on Sunday. Boomer Sooner.